Hey Josh.
Hello everyone, my name is Josh Belcher and I want to talk to you guys a little bit about fracking today. So my proposition for today is fracking possesses serious dangers to the environment that directly affect human health. So many of you may not know what fracking is, so if you don't know what fracking is, I can divide it for you. So fracking is actually taking injected, highly pressurized water and injecting it into subterranean rock, opening up fissures so they can extract either natural gas or they can extract oil. So this, of course, is used for a lot of our energy production, and we're actually very reliant on it in the US. So the first hydraulic fracturing, we've been using the fracturing for about 70 years. So this is a very old process that we've been using for quite a while now, and it's given us time to rely on it. And the first case was Halliburton using this, and many of you may know Halliburton. Maybe you've heard of it. They're an oil extraction company that is in the Middle East right now. So, fun fact. So, why do I think fracking is dangerous? Well, first of all, fracking contaminates both drinking water and ocean water. And those are pretty important, right? So, fracking uses a combination of extremely toxic chemicals, combines them with water, and injects them into the earth. So that's the whole process of it. So the process of fracking contaminates water itself. So how much water? A lot of water. So each well uses approximately 5.1 million gallons of water per frac. And there's hundreds and thousands of these fracking operations going on constantly in the US. From 2011 to 2014 in Ohio, there's a total of 4 billion gallons used for fracking in that state. So within that amount of time, 4 billion gallons were used. And then based approximately on 1,500 horizontal wells fracked in 2011, in Pennsylvania, they used 12 to 20 million gallons per day for just one fracking operation. So, going on to the ocean. The EPA allows offshore fracking wells to dump toxic water directly into the Pacific Ocean. So how much are they allowed to? More than 9 billion gallons of fracking water is dumped into the Pacific Ocean off California's coast per day. Or per year, I'm sorry. So if you've ever seen, if you went to Long Beach or Huntington Beach and you see those oil rigs off in the distance, they're actually total are dumping 9 billion gallons, which is a lot. And also fracking is prone to spilling. So we know that oil pipelines, they leak after fracking and they're sending it to another place, or actually the injected fracking solution is brought up from the earth again. So according to California Council of Science and Technology, between 2011 and 2014, there were 575 wastewater spills in California, and 18% of those affected waterways. Also, that goes along with reports of explosions and reports of flammable drinking water. A study conducted by the Environmental Health Perspectives of 68 drinking water wells in northeastern Pennsylvania and New York showed methane contamination rose sharply with proximity to fracking sites. So anytime you get closer to a fracking site, methane gets elevated in drinking water. And fracking can also cause earthquakes. So that's very, very important because when there's an earthquake, it can bring the wastewater back up into our main waterways, which is very, very dangerous. So fracking wastewater is most commonly disposed of through permanent injection into deep wells, which can be documented by numerous studies caused by earthquakes. And this is according to research done by the Pacific Institute, specifically Heather Connolly. They've measured magnitudes from 3 or greater, which may not sound like a lot, and it may sound like it doesn't damage much, but the largest fracking-related earthquake recorded was 5.7 in Prague, Oklahoma. And that was responsible for destroying 14 homes, damaging a federal highway, and was felt in 17 states. So that hurts us economically. So that can cripple our infrastructure. That can cripple low-income families who have homes that aren't sturdy enough to withstand seismic movement. So fracking and stress faults they also leave the faults more vulnerable. So if it's on a fault line and you're fracking on it, it actually makes it more vulnerable. And can have possibly even more seismic activity, causing even more of the injected fluid to come back to the surface and contaminate the water. Along with that, fracking also pollutes the air. The closer residents live to fracking wells, the more elevated their exposure risk to toxic air contaminants. So specifically in California, studies conducted by the California Council on Science and Technology show the most significant public health risks, including adverse birth outcomes and increased risk of cancer, occur within a half-mile of an active oil and gas development. In the Los Angeles basin alone, there are 20 schools, 39 daycares, 27 elderly homes, and 128,000 people within a half-mile of fracked or otherwise stimulated well. Natural gas as well, that's fracked, mostly methane, which is commonly extracted by fracking is mostly methane and extremely potent greenhouse gas, which traps 86 times as much heat as CO2 over a 20-year period, so much more potent than other greenhouse gases. And this is from Think Progress. This is a quote from them. Analysis of fracking sites in southwestern Pennsylvania has found that methane was being released into the atmosphere 100 to 1,000 times the rate the Environmental Protection Agency estimated. The study found that drilling operations at 7 well pads emitted 34 grams of methane per second on average, much higher than EPA estimated, which was 0.04 grams to 0.3 grams of methane per second, so quite substantial. So to conclude, why is fracking dangerous? It pollutes our water, both in oceans and freshwater. It creates earthquakes that can further contaminate our environment by bringing back up the toxic solution, and it also contaminates our air. Thank you.
And you've got an outline to give me. Excellent. Okay. And now remember I told you that I'm going to do comments after your speeches, and the comments will be on the end of your presentation. So when you watch it on YouTube later, hopefully that'll help you understand a little bit what's going on the evaluation forms, which I know sometimes people have difficulty reading. Hard as it is to believe. Okay. I thought you clearly identified your proposition, so that's pretty good. There's not really a preview. I mean, I know that there's some general arguments about the safety of fracking that's going to be presented. In the body of the speech, you did have pretty good indicators, although I do think that you could use a clearer numerical signpost on the second and the third points. But I could tell that there was a structure there. The first point sounded like it actually had 2 points to it. One that suggested that this is occurring regularly, and a second that suggested that it was dangerous. So that got a little confusing. So the labeling needs to be a little bit sharper. But otherwise, I thought you did a good job there. You kind of gave the background of the issue enough clarity so that we know what's going on in the historical context. I thought that was pretty solid. Like I said, the labeling of the secondary points could be a little bit sharper, but it was easy, and I especially appreciated at the end of the speech that you, in your summary, that you reminded us what those main points were. That solves a lot of problems also. You explained the assumptions in each of the topics pretty well. Excuse me. And I thought that you did a good job. You came across as if you knew what you were talking about. You looked at us regularly. You're didn't have any difficulty pronouncing the terminology of the subject that you're talking about, so I think you're doing fine there when it comes to your ethos. You come across pretty effectively. The evidence, I thought in the first half was a little inconsistent. We got a lot of stuff that is factual data that I don't get any sources on. There's also a couple of examples that you use that I think you need to source as well. But you got better during the speech, and you made reference, for example, to sources for the amount of water that gets released. Some of the when you're quantifying some of the waste spills, that sort of thing. I thought you did a pretty good job on that. I thought, like I said, it was a little bit stronger with the citations as you went on in the speech. In the first part of the speech, you take the examples and the factual data as givens without necessarily providing us that. Now, I do think you need to give us a little bit more context on the water issue, because you say 9 billion gallons. That's a lot of water. I agree. It's a lot of water. If California, had the 9 billion gallons, that would be pretty good. Although I'm not exactly sure in proportion, like you need to say, it's released 9 billion gallons is released into the ocean every year, and I'm going, okay, well, what percentage of that is, how much is that to the ocean? It's because it could be half of the water in the Pacific. It could be a drop to the Pacific. So, and that probably is going to affect our levels of concentration and how much danger it is and that sort of thing. And so I think that there's missing a little bit of context there. That'll probably be an argument that the respondent's going to talk about a little bit more. It's not necessarily your responsibility, but anything that you can do to show that it's more significant and more dangerous, I think that's what you want to be doing. There are some statistical correlations that are being used to make causal claims, and we're going to talk a little bit about that when we get to the reasoning process, but you did provide some sources on that. The example of the earthquake in Oklahoma, we went back again where there's no sourcing on that. I'm not doubting that it occurred. I just think you want to be consistent. And like I said, you'd been better in the earlier parts of the speech. And the CO2 issue, I think maybe it's a little bit of a sidetrack issue from the things that you started off talking about. It might, in fact, make more sense to save it. It's either a fourth point or it's something that you could put into a different speech. Let's talk about immediate health, because otherwise it's, now we got a climate change argument thing that's going on here, and that's really a different issue. So I think if you're talking about ambient pollution and the direct effects it has on people's human health when you're talking about their proximity to the drilling sites, that is fine, and I think your evidence there is pretty good. You open another can of worms when you get into that other issue, and you don't really have time to develop it. Yeah. So I think that maybe that would make sense to sort of leave out. I thought you had excellent audience contact and did a very good job explaining issues as well. All right, thank you.